Okay, so I'm going to end this series with just a couple of resources. And if these change, after this video is recorded, I will keep the resources updated in the PDF here. So check the PDF. There might be more added if you're watching this at like any particular time. But let's just like reflect a little bit about how those interviews went and what might be going on the interviewer side. What kinds of things are interviewers looking for? So, how did the candidate analyze the problem? Did the candidate miss any special or edge cases, or were they even thinking about them at all? Did the candidate approach the problem in like a very logical and methodical way? So, like, was it organized? Was their process organized? If they're really all over the place, is that an indication of how they work or how they approach problems? Does the candidate have a strong foundation in really basic, fundamental computer science concepts? So being able to answer some questions that are asked along the way really help convince the interviewers that you do. Did the candidate produce working code, and was the candidate able to test the code? Again, this isn't really talking about like really minor bugs here and there. That isn't a big issue. You do want to write real code. It needs to be very close to working code. It would be great if it was working code, but that isn't necessarily always the goal or ever the goal. And so testing and working code can be just from visual inspection. Is the candidate's code clean and easy to read? So looking for good style, using good function names, using good spacing so that it's readable, adding comments, making sure your indentation is right. Can the candidate explain their ideas? So if you're just writing code, even if it's right, but you're not explaining it, it's really no good. And then, they're really learning a lot about what you're like. So are you pleasant to have this experience with? Really think about the way that you're responding to questions and the way that you're asking questions and the way that you're responding to suggestions, because it's a good indication of what it would be like to work with you. And these are going to be your colleagues, right? And so they want to know what it would be like in working on a project with you. Some of the things that I didn't touch on throughout these videos are some of the other parts of the hiring process. So in addition to technical interviews, there's behavioral interviews. This can happen in the phone screen, or it can also happen in a totally separate interview, either on-site or for the pandemic in remote, like Zoom call type thing. It's really important to take some time to prepare for behavioral questions. They are typically of the nature of tell me about a time, and then it's themed around some behavior or kind of I don't want to say behavior, but they're always themed around like some aspect of the professional world that's really important. So teamwork, independence, project management skills, that kind of stuff. And so why you need to think about it is because when you're on the spot, you don't want to say something that you wished you didn't say, right? So tell me about a time you missed a deadline. You're like, oh, actually, I've missed a lot of deadlines, or just something like that. And it just, totally puts a bad light on you. Tell me about a time you experienced a conflict with a teammate, and you kind of go off on this very emotional story that was actually really traumatizing for you, or maybe it was really stressful for you that really didn't go well, and you kind of go off on it rather than express what you want to, which is something about how you overcame it or what you did with that information. So take some time to think about these different categories: teamwork, initiative or individual motivation, self-learning, self-study. Might ask questions like that, tell us about a time that you faced a technical error that you didn't know and you were able to figure it out on your own. Stuff like that. think about all those different categories and try to make sure you have kind of a story in mind and kind of a script in mind that you're comfortable talking about and that you can say something useful. So generally they want to know how you were able to overcome or handle that situation in a proper way, or at least what you learned from it. So you can't really get to the stage of being interviewed unless you have a proper resume. And I know that we have the career services here and there's lots of resources for this, so I don't want to spend too much time just like repeating a bunch of stuff you already know. But in case you don't, I just wanted to make sure that you have at least the basics. So a resume should only be one page when you're leaving college and getting entry-level engineering positions. So you're going to want to make sure to format it so that it can be one page only. You obviously have your name and contact information on it. I don't really believe in putting your address on a resume. I see people doing that all the time. I think that's it's an unnecessary. Your resume goes out to lots of different people, and I think that's a little bit private. So I would never put my address on a resume, but I do put like a phone and an email, and you want to make sure that the phone is a phone number you can easily get contacted on, not like a work phone number, that wouldn't really work if you're looking for a new job. Objectives. I'm not a big fan of objectives. I typically think that they're a waste of space, and I read them and I don't learn anything new about the person applying. The only time I think that you should have an objective is you have a specific interest that really needs to be stated. So for example, if you're looking for a particular type of job that's very specific, like you're like, I want to work in machine learning, something like that, which is probably not something you do at the entry level, but you know what I mean. If you have a very, very specific interest, it's great to put it. It shows that that's important to you. But then you have to make sure that it's coincides with whatever you're applying for. So if you're interested in machine learning, but you're applying for software engineering positions that are more general, that objective looks bad. You're going to have your education information and your work history. They should actually go in this order. Education information should be the first, and your work history should be next. Next should be your projects. These are typically personal projects or team projects. They can be school projects, but typically they shouldn't just be course projects. If you're kind of earlier on, it's okay to put your course projects that you found particularly relevant onto your resume, but just make sure that you indicate that they're course projects, because obviously everyone who's getting a CS degree is going to do lots of course projects, and so you don't want to misrepresent those projects. Projects should really be personal projects that you're working on, team projects that you're working on that are more substantial, and that kind of thing. But as you're getting started, if you've done some tough projects or projects you're really proud of, like things you would put on GitHub and they're course projects, you can put them on there, but don't try to pretend that they're not course projects. Then you want to list all of the technology that you're comfortable with and all the programming languages you're comfortable with. So you could put things, obviously all the languages that you're proficient in. Be really careful with this. If you've just taken an intro class in C++ or even probably 141, you shouldn't be saying you're proficient in C++. You basically have beginner knowledge of C++. And I think even after you finish your whole CS degree, I wouldn't say that you have advanced or expert knowledge in C++. You maybe have some intermediate level C++ knowledge. I mean, just as an example. So try to be accurate with that. C++ is a really hard language, and I don't think anyone would say that they are an expert. So it's better to be more honest about that. So I think proficient in C++ is a good way to put it. And then, after you've taken a couple systems class, I think you can say that you're pretty good at C. It's a pretty easy language to understand fully. So if you feel really strong in your systems classes, then you could put, advanced knowledge in C, and that would be pretty accurate. And then you also could put other things like that you've used, like if you're comfortable with version control, like on Git, if you have experience with Valgrind or other tools. Once you have a bunch of them, it might be too many to list, but especially when you're first writing your resume, it's good to put some of those things on there. Oh, I put objectives are optional twice. Here is a list of things that are really important. I probably should have made them bigger, but I have so much information on all of this like hiring stuff that I'm trying to condense it into just a few useful slides. When you're applying for an internship, and this is actually not really that different for a full-time position, these are kind of the minimum things they're going to be looking at on your resume. They're going to look at your expected graduation to make sure that you're eligible for their position, whether that's an internship or a full-time position, right? They need to know you're graduating in time for the full-time position. Then for the internship, you need to usually be going back to school after that summer to get the internship. So if you're applying for internships when you have already graduated, you're not eligible. So it's really important that you have that expected graduation there. Data structures is something that employers are looking for to see that you've completed. If you are applying right now and you're taking data structures, you're just going to put current in there, that you're currently enrolled in it, and that's okay because you're applying for a position that you're going to start when you are finished with it. But you need to say that you have data structures. It needs to be on your resume as one of the coursework that you're completed. A lot of companies will screen using that. It is actually not required that you have a BS degree for a lot of software engineering positions. So saying that you have data structures experience is actually the minimum requirement now for a lot of positions to at least go into interview. You want to make sure that you have multiple places in your resume indicating your experience with certain languages. So you need to list it in your like skills that you're proficient in it. But then when you list out your projects, you should restate what languages they were on so it further emphasizes that you're proficient in those languages. So if you're saying that you worked on this project, it should say what language you wrote it in, and maybe even some other information about how it was developed if that's relevant. So we have expected graduation as one, say that you're in data structures, what languages you're proficient in, and the fourth thing is extra stuff. So everyone getting a CS degree has a CS degree, right, and is going to have some language experience. So this is really important. What other things have you done that that can show that you have some programming experience or some software development experience? Personal projects is a good one, group projects or team projects, extracurricular projects, internship experiences, other work experience that have given you the similar skills, club experience, hackathons, anything. So all of that stuff will really help show some of the other things that you are bringing. And when you tell about a specific project, or if you competed in a hackathon, you want to add some details that can kind of explain what you did. So what was the project that you made? What were some of the tools that you used? What languages, etc. A couple other tips. Some people wonder about this, if you should include your GPA. You really should only include your GPA if it's pretty good, so 3.5 or better. If your major GPA, like your CS GPA, is higher, you can actually just put in your CS GPA. So you can calculate that out and put that out, and that's a totally appropriate thing to put on there. You really shouldn't have a lot of high school information on your resume. Definitely don't need to have it as education. Everyone knows that if you are in college that you graduated high school already. And, sometimes it's nice to put some honors, like if you have really nice honors to kind of advertise, you can list those for a while, but eventually you should take all your high school stuff off as soon as you have other stuff to put on there. Lots of you probably have had lots of jobs, and you don't want to list every possible job you've had, especially if you've been working in food service. I did all sorts of jobs growing up. I was a server, I was a cook, I worked at a grocery store, and as soon as I went to college and I started applying for engineering positions, I took all of that off, and it was really hard because I had had so many jobs. I had been working since I was really young, and I had this long list of credible job references and stuff, and I had to take it all off because it wasn't really relatable. And you should really do the same thing. If it's your first job, if you're applying for your first internship, your first research position, whatever it is, you can have a couple of those jobs listed, but you'll want to remove them as soon as possible and replace them with other experiences that are relevant to the job that you're applying. So food service, serving in my case, I worked at a skating rink, I did all sorts of teaching and tutoring, all of that I kind of had to leave out. Teaching like all sorts of different extracurriculars. With job descriptions, here's some tips on that as well, which you've probably seen before. Okay. Here's some other resources I'll add to this as I get more of them to kind of help you. There's a lot more, I'm sure, and so they can kind of help you if you want to go beyond that. A big one is I need to take this, I'm using it to prop up my computer, but this is probably one of the best resources. It is an excellent book that goes through all of the topics that are expected to be kind of well understood for your interviews. It's more towards full-time than internships, but it's a good practice for internships because there's lots of good practice problems with solutions. If you're not a book person, maybe this wouldn't work for you, but I think this is an excellent book. And it also has tips. It has like how to prep, and then just lots of practice problems. So it's a really, really well-written book and a really good resource. And so I can't really recommend this one enough. I actually have 2 copies of it. And if we weren't in a pandemic, I would be letting you borrow one of them if you wanted to borrow it for a couple days and give it back to me. But maybe at some point we'll do that. All right, so that is it. Good luck. I hope this was helpful, and see you guys later.